Welcome everybody to Bengals on the Brain. I'm Joe Goodberry, and it is draft week, which means the Bengals are going to make 7 picks, maybe, plus or minus. They may trade. Doesn't matter. They're going to get more players added to this roster this week, and they picked 28th in the first round. They picked 60th in the second round. Those are the premium picks where we're hoping they get some good players, someone that can contribute this year. They found some major contributors in the first 4 rounds. They got 3 guys last season that helped out a lot, and Cam Taylor-Britt and Zach Carter. And then, of course, guy who played every snap on the offensive line, Cordell Volson, in the 4th round. So expect them to be able to find players to help them again. We're here, though. It's draft week. This will be my last mock draft. We're not looking at players today, sort of. Actually, we will see some new players because I'm going to do the mock draft and go through every player that I have them picking in this spot and explain what I have and where I have it and why I have it. And this will be the last one. I'll have some updates on Twitter, at Joe Goodberry if you follow me on Twitter. It's a whole process, the draft. First day, second day, third day. We'll have projections. We'll have an updated big board where as players get drafted, we'll take them off. We will have mock drafts for the following days to project what will happen for the remainder of the draft. But today, final mock draft. What I think the Bengals will do. So this isn't really me, although the two bleed together a little bit. What I think the Bengals will do, could do, should do, and any information I have versus my own evaluation and projections. And they kind of always blur together at this point in the season. I can't tell what is real and what isn't. Almost like a dream. But I find the Bengals to be hard to project this year. Harder than normal. I think the uncertainty around the first round is doing that. Reports you're seeing all this last few days of, I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen. Or GM saying it's going to be crazy, it's going to be wild. Preparing us maybe for their team to make some crazy pick or trade or do something that really no one's projecting. You know, like someone taking Hendon Hooker at 12th overall or whatever it may be. Chaos may be good for the Bengals. I actually would, not for them to make a pick, to play in that chaotic form of the draft, but for it to happen before they're on the clock. If 4 quarterbacks go and 3 receivers go, well, then you're going to get the player you want, or at least the player you probably feel has a first-round grade if you're the Bengals. And so if craziness happens, if chaos does ensue, that could play into their hand very well. So with the uncertainty, with the evaluations in, with how I feel, with how I think they could go, I'm ready to make the pick for them in the first round, pick number 28. And with that selection, I have them going with a guy that had no pre-draft visits. I'm going with defensive tackle Calijah Kancey out of Pitt. And the reason I'm going there, and I'll give you the strengths and weaknesses, but the reason I'm going there is I think the Bengals could really use help as in the interior pass rush department. I think pass rush could potentially be their biggest weakness right now on the roster. And I think you need to have an elite pass rush, or close to it, better than they had last year, in order to make it back to the Super Bowl and actually win it. I think of the last 2 years of them losing to Aaron Donald and Chris Jones. I think of how long it's been since they drafted a defensive lineman in the first round. David Pollock being the last one. And I don't think that means they don't want one. I follow the draft as close as anybody, right? There hasn't been any or too many chances for them to take a first-round offensive lineman. I remember specifically them liking players. And they went before they were on the clock, before the Bengals were on the clock. So I think they would have taken a defensive lineman. It just hasn't fallen that way. So with Calijah Kancey, you get an athletic 3-tech that is an outlier in terms of his size. I will get to that point. Yeah, if you're screaming, no, they can't do this. Well, there's going to be like 10 outliers drafted in the first round, starting with the first pick in the draft. It's going to happen. And why I think Kancey could still be there is because of this. If he was even 5 pounds heavier with 1 inch longer arms, he'd probably go top 15 without a question. In fact, if you're watching this and then on Thursday he does go top 15, it's probably because teams don't care about his size. They care, or they're just able to see the positives outweighing the negatives, I think, completely. With Kalijah, you're getting a guy that is a freak athlete, highly productive, in a system that helps him be productive because they use him correctly. I think a lot of the way Pitt uses him would be the way the Bengals use him. And I've seen people even say, like, would he fit Lou Anarumo's scheme, or would Lou Anarumo even like him? He likes bigger defensive tackles. Yes, until it's pass rush time. Until it's time to get to the quarterback, where he's got Joseph Asai playing defensive tackle. You're not telling me Kalijah would play that role better or be better at that? Of course he would. He grades out as a top 8 player on our draft board that we use, that we create during draft season. Yes, he's not Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's a little bit different. Aaron Donald's, they're close in size. Cansey, 6 foot, almost 282. His arm length is that of a small corner. It's actually remarkable. So does he have the size or the frame to add size? Probably not. But he is strong. He is powerful. He is disruptive as a run defender. Don't let anybody tell you he's not a good run defender. Will he get chewed up in double teams? Of course he will. Of course he will. But so will some of these bigger defensive tackles. A lot of these bigger defensive tackles will have the same issue that Kalijah has. What they can't do is penetrate and get upfield the way he does. Make it hard on you the way he does. And I think with that, the Bengals could potentially get a steal in this scenario. If you're willing to take the outliers and the risks, you could get a steal. And if you remember, the Bengals have made picks like this before, especially in this range of the back half of round 1 to early round 2. When it comes to arm length, Eric Steinbach at the time had the shortest arms ever measured for a guard in combine history. They made that pick with the first pick in round 2, not too far from 28. They took David Pollock, who was knocked for his length at defensive end as well, the guy I just mentioned. One of the shortest arms on record as a defensive end. That's why they called him a linebacker. We know he would have been a defensive end. He's a defensive end. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They did the same with Giovanni Bernard. At the time, had the shortest arms ever measured for a running back at the combine. They picked him top of round 2. So if you don't think they would do it because of arm length, they've done it before. And in fact, I think all 3 of those guys would have been hits. Pollock would have. So at some point, their ability will outweigh that outlier. And I think Kalijah severely helps his team out in a big way and plays a lot in year 1. So we head into round 2 with Kalijah in the back pocket of round 1 at pick 28. Bengals pick 60. And I did a few mock drafts using simulators. I also did a bunch of research to try and see where these guys might land. That's how I landed on Cansey could be there at 28. But I do think a run happens at tight end in round 2. I think Kincaid and Mayer go before the Bengals are on the clock. I don't even think it's an option. I don't think Darnell Washington is the next guy on their board. I feel like it would be Sam Laporta. Would they take Laporta at 28? I don't think so, if a guy like Cansey's still there. So you hope for 60. Is it Musgrave? Is it Laporta? Is it Darnell Washington? All 3 I expect to go before the Bengals are on the clock, or else I think they'd be interested in Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. The guy that remains, and I think they would like to address tight end, and probably the last guy worth a top 2 round pick, is South Dakota State's Tucker Kraft. Nearly 6'5" and 255 pounds, decent length, fast 40 time, small school. That's basically the profile on him. Because when you watch him, and we'll cut the tape right now, he can be a bit clunky as a receiver. He can be a bit boxy as a route runner. He runs routes like a fridge at times. But also after the catch, which I think is one of the underrated positions in the NFL in terms of where you can create yak opportunities, Tucker Kraft's really good there. He makes guys miss. He churns out positive yardage after the catch pretty routinely. I've got a lot of clips here that'll show that. And I think Kraft, being 22 and a half years old, same college as Dallas Goedert, the starting tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Kraft is ready to contribute this year. I wouldn't have taken Kraft if you would have asked me about a month or so ago, before they had Irv Smith, before they re-signed Drew Sample. I probably would have said no on Kraft, because coming from a smaller school, I feel like he still has some refinement to go. I think he's a decent blocker now, but again, sometimes it looks like he's blocking high schoolers out there, depending on the game you choose. There are some quality opponents in FCS football, but I think now with Irv Smith and Drew Sample, both guys can play. Irv Smith hopefully is a steal of a signing, right, at the cheap deal he has. But if Kraft can mix with him, then I think you've got yourself a good 1-2 punch with Sample spelling some of them as well. So it's a good tight end room if you can add Tucker Kraft in there. He caught 58.8% of his contested balls, which is better than what Irv Smith and Drew Sample have been able to do over their careers as well. So I think he provides something there. He provides a little bit after the catch. I like this pick for them in terms of getting a guy with high upside, but also getting a guy that can probably contribute now. So you got 2 athletic upside guys in the first 2 rounds. You go into the 3rd round now, and you've probably addressed 2 of your 4 major needs. I think pass rush, I think tight end, and I think the next 2 is where I go as well. Not trying to just target needs. These guys were on the top 3 of the board every time I use simulators. So heading into the 3rd round now, the Bengals select Roschon Johnson, running back out of Texas. And I think they will really, really like Roschon. I think if I was projecting the running back board, they'll have it Bijan, number 1. They'll have Jahmyr Gibbs, number 2. They'll have Zach Charbonnet, number 3. And I think Roschon will be number 4. So taking him in the 3rd round, I think there's a scenario where they may consider it in the 2nd if a run on running backs happens. I'm not projecting that. I don't think that happens at all. Maybe they trade down from round 2. But Roschon, why would they like him? So you need a guy that can run from shotgun and run gap schemes from shotgun. You need a guy that can pass protect. Roschon's one of the best at it. You need a guy that can make people miss. You need a guy with good hands. So he checks all of those boxes. The reason he's not higher is 2 reasons. Number 1, he's not very fast. So you'll see a lot of comparisons to Samaje Perine, which I think Roschon would fill the Perine role right away. He'd be your 3rd down back from the jump. And fills a guy who's going to play 400 snaps at least in this offense that throws the ball as often as they do. But the other negative for him, well, I want to finish my thought. So he's similar to Perine. And you may say, I'm not drafting Perine in the 3rd round. And I would agree with that. I think he is similar in terms of style and type, similar long speed. Not similar in terms of short area quickness and agility and making guys miss. Where I think Roschon is better at those things than Perine is. And the thing about Roschon is I think he may have been potentially limited because of being behind Bijan Robinson. I don't think that's very controversial at all. I think had he been a starting running back at a different university, we could be talking about him as a round 2 pick. But because he was behind guys, I think there are times where he processes a little slowly as a runner, where he's always, or where he's not always decisive and can be a bit indecisive in picking his gaps and his lanes and when to fire and when to go. And I think that'll hurt him a little bit. I think right now he's definitely a better passing game back than he is a runner. I think he could develop and get his timing down. I think whenever you're a backup, you struggle with those things. So that may not be an issue with him in the long haul. I think that's something that could be ironed out pretty quickly. So I think if you go now Kancey, now Kraft, and then Roschon Johnson, we're starting off defensive tackle, pass rush, tight end, and then running back for the Bengals. I think this hits major needs for them and could potentially start this draft off exactly the way they want, as long as they can get one more position in round 4. So now we head into the 4th round, and I think there's one position that you still have to address. And some people are going to say, offensive line. The class just really doesn't line up. We're going to get to an offensive lineman, but it's not with the 4th pick. This is for a corner that I believe could help the team out this year in a very specific role. And I'm going with Purdue's, that's Lou Anarumo's alma mater, Corey Trice. Real name, no gimmicks. He is 6'3", 206 pounds. He's got great length, With that size, he's a tremendous tackler, maybe the best tackling corner in this entire class. But he also has 5 picks and 16 pass breakups in his career, which gives him a pretty good ratio for the amount of times he was targeted, getting his own hands on the ball. So I think we got a guy that ran a 4.47, has size, will tackle. I mean, he's a really good run defender and has good ball skills. So that's exactly what you would like. So why is he going in the 4th round? Well, I think sometimes those bigger corners, they slide a little bit because they look stiff, because they're not the natural fluid cover guys. And I don't think he is some naturally gifted man cover corner. He's also going to be 23 years old as a rookie. He's 22.9 right now on draft day. But that could cause him to slip in a very strong corner class. And in fact, I think if anything, his stock is rising. And when we saw him at the combine coming in, I think most saw him as like a 5th, 6th rounder, maybe even later. And now he's pretty consensus going in the 3rd or 4th round. I think it's more likely 4th round. He's going to get pegged to be below a few of the guys that I've got ahead of him as well. But I think the role he could be right away is the Trey Flowers role, where you're asking him to come up and be partially a safety, partially a corner, help out and man cover against tight ends. He's got the size and strength to do that. He's got the coverage ability to do that, but he's also got the physicality. You got to have that part of your game in order to cover the tight ends. Corey Trice has that, and I think he could develop into more. And man, you talk about if he eventually turns into a starter and you compare him with Cam Taylor-Britt, 2 physical, hard-hitting, willing tacklers on the outside, that sounds like Lou Anarumo's type of scheme right there. So I think this is a fun pick in the 4th round. Remember, 4th round and on, your chances of finding a starter are very slim. If you get one, great. If not, can you find a role player, or can you find a guy that can give you positive minutes? And Corey Trice is going to be a good special teamer as well, and a gunner, and help out. If he can be the Trey Flowers and help out there, that's all you're asking for as a rookie. And if he has to do more than that, he and Sidney Jones are your 2 backup primary guys. I think that provides you good depth. And now you've gone defense, offense, back to defense. And so in the 5th round now, as we're starting to pick up a little bit of steam, the Bengals are going to go with a wide receiver in the 5th round. And I think they want to address this position. And I think they want to because, number one, other than Jamar Chase, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are in the last year of their deals. Now, I do think at the very least they'll franchise tag Higgins, and that'll keep him for another year. But the way things are going, I wouldn't expect Tyler Boyd to be here past this season just because it's hard to pay a 3rd receiver. And if the idea is to pay 2 of them and your quarterback, you just really can't spend the money there. It's going to have to be a cheap rookie at some point in the next year or 2. That's going to have to be their starting slot receiver. So even if Tucker Kraft, who we take in round 2 here, could end up being the number 3 option, you're still going to need a slot receiver that can get into that role. And what do the Bengals typically look for? And what is something that I think are indicators for success in the NFL from the wide receiver position? Early breakout age, meaning they became big-time players for their program at a young age. And then you're looking for the production. Production is more important than athletic testing, although this guy tested pretty well as well. And then you have in the last part, you want them to be a sophomore or a junior. You don't want them to be a senior. Senior receivers tend to have almost half of the chances of hitting than an underclassman does. And there's been a lot of underclassmen coming in, but yet we also have a lot of seniors coming into this class because of the COVID years that a lot of these guys took. So it's going to be weird or interesting at the very least to see how this class shakes out in a couple years. But I'm still going to bank on these junior guys, these guys that came out a year early, if not more, hitting their stride. And I'm going with Maryland's Rakeem Jarrett, their slot guy. He's 6 foot 192. Let's take a look. Rakeem Jarrett lined up in the slot for Maryland 94% of the time. So this is a Tyler Boyd replacement. He's also been a gunner on special teams as well, so that helps his value of getting on the field right away as a rookie. But being a slot guy, what are things that we want from you? We want good route running, we want smart route running, we want good hands, and can you create after the catch? And I think Rakeem Jarrett hits all of these boxes. Sometimes in contested situations, I didn't like him as much. I think that's an area of his game he could definitely improve. But when you see the highlights of him making catches away from his body, over guys, taking hits, I think that's a part of his game that will improve in the NFL and get better as he gets older. And his breakout age, or his percentile, puts him in the 73rd percentile for breakout age. Bengals typically are in the 60% or above, so that should help him out a lot. And he's 22 years old right now. I think Raheem Jarrett could be a steal in this class. And he's got a really good shot. So he's an underclassman, good breakout age, good production at Maryland. He's got a shot to be a pretty good number 3 wide receiver in the 5th round, and he can help on special teams, which means you can get him out there pretty early, which typically if you want to find a receiver that's going to be that 5th, 6th active receiver, if they go all the way to 6, but that 5th active receiver, he's got to be able to play special teams, and Jarrett can do that as a gunner. So, like that pick there. Moving on, it's round 6 now. This is when we finally get to the offensive line with UCLA's Antonio Mafi. And Mafi is one of the funnest players I watched this entire draft season. First time watching Zach Charbonnet. And I go, okay, this offensive line is really good for them. And they were. And that's one of the knocks I probably have on Charbonnet. But I started to really focus on the left guard that was just having a great time. And he's 330 pounds. He's a young man still at 22, but he came into UCLA as a defensive tackle and has converted to guard. And you can see it the way he plays because he's a bit raw. Sometimes his footwork is bad. Sometimes his hand placement's bad. That's why he's there in the 6th round, right? But man, does he crush people. Absolutely move people at the point of attack. Displace defensive linemen pretty consistently. Climbs up to linebackers and just makes them pay on a routine basis. Antonio Mafi has a chance to develop into a starter. I believe that. It looks like he's having a good time playing out there. He's already made a position change or swap in the rate he's developed. And I thought he looked really good at the Shrine Bowl practices and in that game. He's got a real chance. And I think the Bengals could use a guard that's a true guard to back these guys up. And I think it's been one of their issues is trying to get a guy like Jackson Carman there, trying to get Hakeem Adeniji in there, trying to get Deontay Smith. These guys all played left tackle in college, and you're trying to throw them into left guard, right guard, in mop-up or pinch duties. Antonio Mafi has played left guard, and that's what he looks like in the NFL. He's going to play left or right guard, and that's it. I don't see him as a backup center. I don't see him as a backup tackle, and that's, again, why you go in the 6th round. But, man, one of the funnest players I've watched this entire process. That's your O-line pick. I know people are waiting for it too, and they're wondering why you don't go earlier. Or not tackle. Right tackle. It could be right. I get it. There's got to be one there. I think they'll get a couple undrafted guys that they've met with. 7th round now. I'm double dipping, and it's not at tight end. It's not at receiver. It's not on offensive line. It's not at corner. It's not at defensive tackle. I figured I'd go through the whole thing. It's at running back. I think the Bengals could remake that room. I think running back and tight end are 2 rooms that they have interest in remaking. They've done a lot at tight end now, getting in a free agent, getting a 2nd round pick. At running back now, losing Samaje Perine, getting in a 3rd round pick. I think one more guy that could fill that out is Arizona State's. He transferred from Wyoming, so he's a 5th-year senior, and he's older, and I don't like older prospects. He'll be 25 as a rookie for a running back. Very similar to Chris Evans, actually. Similar situation, or profile, I should say. Is Valade from Arizona State. And Valade looks like the Isaiah Pacheco of this class. He's got decent size to him. He runs like he's running on hot coals. His feet are on fire. He is very aggressive and very deliberate in his movements and laying and dishing out punishment. But he's got some ability to receive the ball. He's got some ability to make guys miss. And he's got good long speed. So, yeah, he's been worn out, man. Anytime you're a 5th-year senior and you've been playing a lot the last few years, you're going to come in with a lot of carries and a lot of age on you. And that's why he's available in the 7th round. In fact, he may go undrafted. But that's what, they're at the end of the 7th round. This is what we're looking at here at this pick. But I think it provides you an opportunity to say, okay, even if we keep Mixon, it's Mixon and Roschon. And then we're going to battle it out. And basically it's going to be Chris Evans and Valade for that 4th spot if you're keeping Travion Williams as 3rd. And you're going to make one of those guys emerge, right? You don't want to keep Chris Evans on the roster if he's not a guy you can rely on. And it looked like that was the case last year, especially towards the second half of the season and throughout the playoffs. The Bengals just didn't use him enough and didn't seem like they wanted to use him. So I give you a new fourth round option. No, I'm sorry, a new fourth back option in X Valade that provides at least enough. We're talking about a late round pick that, because he's older, he's there a little bit later. You don't need him for even 5 years, 4 years, whatever. It's a seventh round pick. If he can contribute and help out your roster in any way, then it's worth the shot. And I think he can do that. So I like Valade. I did a whole longer video on Twitter. If you can't see the highlights, I tried to clip because it wasn't film I could share. Then go to my Twitter where we do have a 6-minute video available. Anyway, that's the draft. I need you guys to give me a grade. So we're going Kalijah Cansey, round 1. Tucker Kraft, round 2. Roschon Johnson, round 3. Corey Trice, round 4. Raheem Jarrett, round 5. Antonio Mafi, round 6. And X Valade, round 7. Heavy on offense, but we start with defense, so I think we rounded out pretty well. Didn't get a high-end tackle. Every time I do these, they're not falling in a spot where I'd want one. If DeJuan Jones falls to 60, I'm taking him. If Blake Freeland's there in the third round, I'm taking him. But it just doesn't happen ever. So I end up in a situation where it's like, all right, if you're going all the way to the fourth round, we're talking about backup linemen anyways. And in the fourth round, I like Corey Trice as a potential guy that can help you this year and potentially start for you down the line. So that's the way it goes. And tell me what you think. This is my last mock draft for Bengals on the Brain, where I'm trying to predict what the Bengals may do this weekend. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And let me know how dumb I am for this mock draft.